I realize that most people don't have any time for politics, so I'll make this quick. I'm shooting for less than 180 seconds. But this is something that is too important to leave you ignorant about. A few Democrats running for president support a policy that seems so innocent that most wouldn't even think twice about it. But if this bill gets implemented because you didn't think about it while you were voting, hundreds of thousands of people could lose their jobs. I'm here to tell you that enacting the policy to raise the minimum wage across the nation would be a devastating thing to do. This is an economic policy, so let's talk economics to get to the bottom of this issue. There are two basic principles at play here you've probably heard about. They are supply and demand. Supply and demand are functions that inform us how much a good is wanted and supplied at a certain price. Because they are functions, they can be represented as graphs. So let's take a look. This green strand of yarn represents the demand function, or curve. This curve shows us that when prices are high for a good, demand is low, and when prices are low, demand is high. This yellow strand of yarn represents the supply function, or curve. The supply curve is opposite the demand curve. That's because when prices for a good are high, producers are willing to supply more, and when prices are low, producers want to produce less. These curves intersect here at what is called the equilibrium. Equilibrium is the price where demand equals supply. This is where the market wants to be. So if demand or supply shifts at all, equilibrium will adjust like so. There are some things that can restrict a price from reaching equilibrium, and if that sounds bad, just know it is bad. The restriction I want to talk about is called a price floor. Price floors, as a general matter, keep prices from going any lower than the floor. If the price floor sits below the equilibrium, there is no issue, but once it sits above the equilibrium, we have a problem. When prices are forced above the equilibrium, suppliers want to supply a lot of goods because the prices are high. However, demand is low due to high prices. This difference is called a surplus. A surplus may not sound all that bad, but let's have minimum wages be the example of why they are. To set up this example, let's think a little counterintuitively. What are the goods provided when it comes to jobs? It's labor. Who provides it? The employees. Who purchases the labor? The employer does. Now think of the minimum wage as the price floor that it is. If we raise it and set it higher than equilibrium, what do we see? Labor is more expensive, so employers demand less of it, but because their labor is worth more now, there are more people who want to supply their labor. We now have a surplus of labor. That means that a lot of people will lose their jobs. How much is a lot? Well, in 2017, 1.8 million workers had wages right around the current minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Since politicians want to double the minimum wage, let's say only half of those workers lose their job due to a sudden labor surplus. That means 900,000 people are out of a job earning $0 an hour instead of $7.25 an hour. That sucks. A policy to raise the minimum wage will only cause the poor to become poorer. Don't try to push the market around. It's a force you cannot force. Hey, I'm Caden Collins. Thanks for watching. As you can probably tell, I did all the work myself. Still need a lot of practice. It was my first time, so it's kind of an interesting process. It took a lot more time than I realized, but thanks anyway.